So, what a contrast to last week's results. We were promised a different setup and a reaction, and we certainly got that against Arsenal. Steve, it wasn't a classic, but was that just what we needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming up against a side who seem to have forgotten how to score goals is quite helpful. And yeah, I mean, you could tell that there was a sort of renewed unity in the team. We were actually playing as a unit. While we weren't pressing particularly high, which seemed to be by design, you could tell that everyone was very conscious of making sure they were in the right place at the right time, more often than not. So yeah, already they'd already surpassed the very low bar that people had set for them the previous week. And yeah, and we took a chance when one fell our way. And I mean, I don't think I'd be slightly surprised and concerned if anybody sort of any importance kind of dress the performance up as being anything special in terms of the way we played and us as an attacking unit, because we were largely kind of anonymous for most of the game, really. But I think just getting that monkey off the back after last week was probably more important, and actually even the result probably wasn't necessarily that high in terms of priorities. It was just making sure that we were actually doing what the system was designed to do, and for the most part, that kind of worked pretty well. I mean, if Fraser Forster hadn't put in that performance, or if Arsenal had been a little bit better in front of goal, then maybe we still lose that game anyway. But no, win's a win, and take the 3 points, and be happy that it's Arsenal fans pulling their hair out this weekend as opposed to us.
And not us. I don't think any of us really saw that result coming yesterday, Glenn. But if we played like that every week, it'd be pretty dull. But a win's a win, and it's kind of what we needed.
Definitely. I mean, the whole performance was a reaction to the Chelsea game. It was all about defensive shape out of possession. So we didn't leave the gap between the defence and the midfield that Mason Mount basically stood in with 30 yards all around him the previous week. So that gap wasn't there. I felt a bit sorry for Armando Broja up front, because he was the very definition of a lone striker.
Yeah, target man.
If he got the ball, he didn't have a Saints player within about 30 yards of him most of the time. You could tell that Elyounoussi and Armstrong, who were the two who were supposed to be closest to him, were really concentrating on keeping in a line with Romeo and Ward-Prowse. So, Broja did as good a job as he could have done with the service he had and the support he had. So, yeah, I mean, I've got to big up Ralph, really, because that's not the way he wants to play. In an ideal world, he wants us to press high and win the ball high, and that was the complete opposite. Because when we lost the ball, we just dropped back into shape. Whether it was totally a reaction to last week, or whether that was something he thought could work against this Arsenal team, I don't know. At the end of the day, the end justified the means, and everyone's happy. But I agree with Steve. Most people would have been happy with just a performance that wasn't shocking, and to get the result out of it was an absolute positive. And there was some good performances. Obviously Forster, but all the back three put their hand up, I thought, and everyone else just worked incredibly hard. You couldn't give them all 9 out of 10 or anything like that, because they didn't do much with the ball, as we've said. But there was some really good concentration. Everyone would have come off absolutely knackered from that, because it was just that sort of game where you had to concentrate the whole time. But it's not just Forster. I'd big up the whole of the back three as well. So I thought they were excellent.
Yeah, we'll get onto that starting lineup in just a sec. Dan, was that the perfect response after last week? Ralph said it was going to be a bit more defensive. I don't think we quite realised how defensive it was going to be, but there was that togetherness that perhaps was lacking last week.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think there's much more I can add that Steve and Glen haven't already said. I think it was obviously the perfect response that they beat Arsenal and kept the clean sheet in the process, having conceded 6 times against Chelsea. And as we've all kind of said, it should have been more than 6. For me, again, I mean, the result was secondary. I just wanted to see Southampton turn up, put put some effort in and actually, just play a coherent plan. And yeah, while it left a lot to be desired going forward, and Ralph even kind of admitted after the game that that's not normally what he likes to see from his team, but ultimately he had to do it. There had to be a response, and if it meant kind of not playing expansive football or pressing high, then so be it. And as Glenn said, the end justified the means, didn't it? So
yeah, Glenn, just talking about that starting lineup, it was pretty much the one that you called on Friday. I think I saw a tweet from you on Friday saying these are the people that I'd like to see start tomorrow, and then blow me, they did.
Yeah, more or less.
Intel.
No, no, it was
insightfulness.
I was actually thinking about what we talked about last week, about it needs to be shaken up a little bit, but it's got to be not just for the sake of it. It's got to be players who have not done badly in their their time on the pitch. And I thought the guys that came in, I mean, Jan Valery, he made the one mistake in the first half, which nearly led to a goal, and that's his thing. He has a decent performance, but he's in that. It's similar to Jack Stevens in many ways. There's one major Rick every game, and he's still young enough to get that out of his game. But maybe he's not quite ready to be a first team starter every week. But I thought he did well apart from that. I thought Lianco was tremendous. Just the lad obviously wants to defend first and foremost. That's what he likes doing. He's not too bothered about the flashy side of things. He just wants to defend, and it's the character he brings to the team. It's just celebrating every tackle. I mean, it's a bit silly sometimes, but celebrating every tackle, every good bit of play from anybody else. He's round high-fiving them. They must get fed up with him, but he's just a good lad. And to bring him into the team, it just adds something, a little bit of leadership, if you like. But I think I've said the word already. Character.
Were you surprised that he played 90 minutes? Because I thought he's going to come off at a moment. He's not played enough.
There was one bit where, bearing in mind he did his hamstring, there was one bit where he was sprinting back against, I think it was Martinelli in the right back position. And it was a real proper sprint for about 40 yards. And I'm thinking he's just going to twang here and end up in a heap.
Yeah.
I think playing centre half, I think if you're a central midfielder or something, or a winger, then playing probably 90 minutes is hard. As a centre half, especially in the middle of a back three, it's probably not the most sort of physically demanding. I'm sure he'd disagree with that. So, but he got through the game relatively well, and he looked pretty fresh at the end. So I hope he gets a run of games, to be honest, because he deserves it. And and Jan Bednarek, we've talked about him. He's had some dodgy games. He has one good game, then he has two dodgy ones. He looked more comfortable in a three, even though he was on the left-hand side, and I don't think that's necessarily where he'll play long term. But I thought he did a decent job. And I know for the Polish national team they play three across the back, so he's used to that. Maybe that's a way forward to get the best out of him. But
given the fact that his head was in the Polish national squad rather than playing Man City, maybe that,
you're not going to let that go, are you?
Maybe that was our way of getting his head back in the Saints game.
He was all right. No. What did you make of the starting lineup, Stephen? And when you saw that sort of come through at 2:00, were you like, yeah, this is what we need, this is going to be all right? Or were you kind of going scratching your head and thinking how that was going to work?
No, it kind of looked fine. I mean, we've played three at the back, well, five at the back.
It was a proper five, wasn't it, as well?
A few times against the better sides in this league, and it's worked quite well in terms of shutting down the obvious channels where quite often we struggle a little bit because we tend to leave too much space between the centre back and whichever fullbacks alongside them. Whereas with the five, there's obviously automatically less space for them to be able to pass through that lane. But no, I thought that system made sense. Personally, actually, I might have gone with Che Adams up front because I think A, he's got a little bit more experience, but B, I think while he's a little bit shorter in stature, I think he's slightly better than Brozier at holding the ball up.
Yeah.
And maybe he'd have been able to hold it up for a little bit longer because, I mean, the problem we had, particularly second half, was that we cleared the ball the way long, and it would just, I mean, if Brozier got a touch on it, it would be a bonus, but then the ball would just be coming straight back at us.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Adams probably gives you a little bit more strength in that situation, where he might be able to at least hold a defender off for 10 seconds and then lay it off to a teammate. Whereas the ball yesterday was largely just bouncing off somebody and falling straight to an Arsenal foot or outplay for a throw-in. I mean, there are a few kicks that Forster put straight into touch, which were a little bit frustrating. But
it was all quite predictable where it was going to go, wasn't it? Every time
you could see where he was aiming, though. At least one thing I found interesting with Forster actually was that he was deliberately whenever he was kicking it from the left-hand side of the penalty area, he was deliberately kicking it with his left foot, even under no particular challenge. So it seems as if I don't know whether he's been working on some particular aspects of his game where he's now able to kick sort of dead straight without any sort of fade or swerve on the ball, with his weaker foot, which kind of gives him a little bit more room to play with, I guess, before a striker comes and sort of closes the space down. But that was
could that be his injury,
Dan?
Because that was the thing, wasn't it? Dan, I know how much you love talking about Fraser Forster and the goalkeeping situation, but I know that Ralph said afterwards about the injury and perhaps he wasn't going to play at some point.
Yeah, he said that Fraser had to limp out of training early, basically on Friday with an ankle issue. Up until I think Saturday morning, Ralph didn't think Fraser was going to play and Caballero was going to be starting in goal, but Ralph kind of paid tribute to the physios and medics who managed to patch Fraser up, and off he went and put in that performance. I mean, whether that had anything to do with the kicking or not, I don't know.
So people will now obviously start talking about his contract again. And you've written about this, Dan. You've spoken about this. There's not going to be any word on that from the club anytime soon, is there? That's going to be a decision for the summer, I guess. It doesn't matter how well he plays against Chelsea and Arsenal.
Well, I mean, I've written about it again for tomorrow. So, yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. Yeah, I think it hasn't changed in the sense of, obviously, we know Alex has got his contract, and now everyone knows Fraser's out of contract. And whether Ralph is quite coy on it, he said, we're always in negotiations. And I did press him on this yesterday when he said, we are in negotiations. After I asked about Fraser, I said about his contract, specifically about Fraser's contract. And he didn't say yes to that. So I imagine they're still kind of waiting to see what happens. And that's a position, they can be in. And I think for Fraser, it's clear to me that he's reaching a level that he's not reached for quite some time, I think. And is he inspired by the fact he's out of contract? Possibly. I think he's got nothing to lose at this point, is he? I mean, he's got everything to gain and nothing to lose. If he doesn't get his contract at Southampton, I'm sure other clubs will be looking at, some of his performances in the second half of this season and thinking he could do a job for us as a number two or even as a number one for a newly promoted team or whatever. So he can kind of go out there and play with no pressure in some regard. But then at the same time, he has to earn that contract. And you don't want to get too reactive or too emotional about it, but he's doing everything he can. I mean, Ralph said yesterday, look, he's putting so many good arguments forward to earn a new contract. And I think we can only sit here and agree with that. That yesterday felt like a moment to me where if he is to get one, I think yesterday's performance would be the point where the kind of tide changed in his favour.
Yeah, be interesting to see what happens. Glenn, let's have a little word about his performance yesterday. What was the best save for you? Was it the Saka one? Because just in terms of the timing, if we go behind, then it's difficult to come back, isn't it? That was a great one, and I know the other save in the second half would have been down your end.
I'd given up the Saka one. I was like, goal, damn. Yeah. But Saka should have kept it low, obviously, and he put it. He put it at a savable height, but for Forster to react and get that away from the goal was ridiculous. It just seemed. I mean, I've seen the replay now, and it is relatively close. So for him to have the reactions to sort of get that away from the goal was remarkable. The two saves that were directly in front of me in the second half, the one from Smith Rowe, that was kind of behind him and going in, but Smith Rowe didn't hit it particularly well. and that gave him the chance. But that was a different kind of save because he showed real good real good feet for such a big guy. To a lot of goalkeeping is about getting across the goal and your foot movement, and to get a couple of good steps in before he took off and saved that was an exceptional save. And I also like the one from Granit Xhaka in the second half, which was actually going wide, I think, just about, but it would have been inches, That was another really, really good save. I mean, they do tend to go over the top when talking about saves. There were two brilliant ones in there, and the rest, if you'd let them in, you'd have been disappointed, sort of thing. But you've still got to keep them out, and he did that, and you can't criticize it. I think his kicking on the whole was very, very good. And the contract thing is really interesting because Dan said there you don't want to be too reactive. If the story about McCarthy's contract is to be believed, which we largely think it is, it sounds like they've already been slightly too reactive too early. So so they either don't want to make another mistake, or they're trying to undo it, or whatever. But it's an interesting one because it's either not going to look very good from a fan's point of view, because, like, for example, if we announce tomorrow that Fraser's leaving and McCarthy's our number one choice next year, that's going to go down like a lead balloon. If we announce that we've got the same two goalkeepers again on first team goalkeeper salaries next year, then I can't imagine Toby Steele's going to be.
We haven't addressed the problem, have we? Yeah.
He's not going to be terribly happy about the fact that we've got the same situation again that we've been sort of worried about for the last sort of 2 years. So it is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I think there's an argument. I would say the club could have avoided that problem with kind of announcing Alex now, and with Fraser playing so well, just announce Alex's contract when he signed it. I mean, if they just announced it last year, there would be no debate now. The debate would be, shall we give, is Fraser out? There would I don't think that debate would necessarily be there.
It makes it even harder now every time Fraser.
That's the problem they've got, is because Fraser's come in.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he was great against Leeds, but it sounds silly, but he was obviously very good against Chelsea, and was good against Arsenal. It's kind of like they've created that problem by just not announcing Alex. They're in a situation where this is created off their own back, in my opinion, with the Forster and Alex situation.
Well, they were just trying to weirdly media manage it, weren't they? It's just like, I mean, you've announced a contract. Well, you've signed a contract. Just announce it.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Vic Norris watching on YouTube says we need to give Fraser the contract, but Mark says until next week when he drops a clanger, because of course we're quite fickle when it comes to these things. The guy behind me was berating him for all his free kicks that were going out, his goal kicks going out.
Let's not forget, kind of, if we had this discussion 2 years ago, I'd say all three of you would have said we need to get Fraser out of this club. I mean, he's draining our wages. It's one of them. I mean, the club have been desperate to offload him. For 3 out of the 5 years that he's had a contract there. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a really kind of nuanced situation. It's fascinating, really.
Yeah. Steve, let's just chat about the other players that came in. Obviously, Jan Valery, Janko, Perot as well. Some really good performances in there yesterday. Yeah,
I thought Perot was quietly very solid. And I think just having a left footer on the left in that situation does just give you so much more balance. I mean, there was. I mean, obviously, as we've said, we offered pretty much nothing as an attacking force for the vast majority of the game. But just because it's his side, the positional awareness you naturally have in that situation just gives you more reassurance, I think, more than anything. I mean, Walker Peters has done a great job when he's had to play over that side, but I think Walker Peters is still a better player on the right hand side. And as we said last week, Tino's been having a bit of an off time of it the last probably month or so. Needed a spell out the side, and I mean, Walker Peters and Perot were absolutely fine on in those positions. So I mean, it's at the end of the day, we knew we had 3 good options in fullback positions. And ably demonstrated this weekend.
Glenn, a word on the goal. Was that your end, Ben White playing everybody onside? I hadn't noticed that until afterwards, by the way. It was like a hopeful overhead from Perot, wasn't it? Like,
he wasn't even looking, was he?
Just like, let's just whack it back and hope someone. Fair play to Elyounoussi for keeping that alive, but what a time to score.
Yeah, and it was completely unexpected, obviously. And I mean, it looked like Perot was sticking to the game plan of don't mess up, just get rid of the ball, hook it over your shoulder, and then we'll worry about it later. Yeah, I mean, the main sort of credit for the goal goes to Elyounoussi for keeping it alive, because and he hooked it back into an area, and I didn't realise until I saw it on the TV what a good finish it was from Bednarek. I thought he'd shinned it, to be honest. It looked like the old left foot swinger, and it's gone off his shin and gone in. But he's made a really good connection with it, and that's what's done Ramsdale. I don't know whether, if you're being exceptionally harsh, should Ramsdale have stopped it? Possibly. He's kind of pushed it into the net, but it has been smashed at him from fairly close. But Ben White's contribution is great, because he lies on the ground in the goal, can't decide whether he's injured or not. First instinct is to just lie there, and then he gets back up and plays everyone on side. So cheers, Ben. I'll tell you what, that's interesting. Ben White, he's always listed as an ex-Saints youth player. I never even realised. I honestly didn't realise until he made his England debut that he'd ever been sort of like in our academy or anything like that.
About 14, I think he left us. He was
released. Was it? It was a long time ago. Like
released very young. But I actually don't think the offside thing actually mattered, because Elyounoussi came from way sort of further on, and because it was then a second phase, Bednarek wouldn't be offside. From the pullback. I did actually wonder whether Elyounoussi had actually kept it in play, because there's one angle on the TV where it looks very like it's quite borderline, and you'd think that a combination of VAR, and I don't know whether the goal line tech gives you anything across the goal line, or whether it's just between the width of the posts as well, whether they might have checked that, but I assume not.
We spoke last week, Dan, about it being a good time to play Arsenal, and when Cedric's on free kicks, as you pointed out yesterday,
that was hilarious.
When did he think that he's James Ward-Prowse? I mean, I thought he got a lot of stick yesterday, which I thought was unnecessary, but it wasn't a great display.
I disagree.
No, I mean, and that was then I sent a tweet, and genuinely up until that point, the two loudest cheers did go when he kicked the ball straight out of play from crosses. I mean, that free kick was terrible, wasn't it? I mean, it was so bad.
Very bad. Glenn,
he got hooked, didn't he, before the hour mark?
Were you booed him, Glenn? Was that you?
Was it me? It wasn't just me. I sit in the family section, so I've got lots of kids around me, so I try not to be too vocal.
I was talking about Cedric to one of the Arsenal guys there. And it is actually, when you I'd forgotten, but they signed him on loan and he was injured at the time. So he wasn't fit when he went there. And then they gave him a 4-year contract.
Yeah, mind blowing.
He had hardly played. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
It's because of his agent, wasn't it? Because his agent's Kia Jarabchin, who at the time was basically dictating Arsenal's transfer policy.
Yeah.
When I left the ground, there were two fans in front of me moaning about the fact that they signed him, and maybe they could have gone for someone like Kyle Walker-Peters.
That's never going to happen from Spurs, though.
I mean, Spurs are definitely going to sell a kid to Arsenal, aren't they?
Done that before, haven't they?
The other thing, I guess, the key for us now is going to be keeping the clean sheet and maybe playing with the three at the back and just trying to be a bit better going forward and a bit more expansive, because that's going to be the struggle, isn't it?
You don't want three at the back against Burnley. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, it was
a very Burnley performance, wasn't it? That's the thing. 5 at the back, 1 up front, and we don't want to see it every week, but it's a foundation, I suppose, isn't it?
It's a foundation for a game like that. But
after the results we've had,
and against that sort of opponent who are going to play an open attacking style, and you know that you've kind of got to an extent, I mean, not quite to the extent of batten down the hatches, but certainly be much more watchful than you would necessarily have to be against a side like Burnley, for example. I mean, obviously, going to discuss Thursday shortly, but I mean, I'll be amazed if we amazed and slightly annoyed if we try the same system and tactics on Thursday that we did yesterday.
But maybe Liverpool, Leicester, end of season, we might see that trotted out again.
Liverpool, certainly. I mean, that game's now going to be moved presumably to the midweek before the last game of the season, which I think is the only slot that Liverpool have got available now.
Yeah.
And so therefore we're basically now in position to replicate what Crystal Palace did, and basically end their title hopes. So that's our motivation.
Or or if they need 7 goals.
Oh, God of honour. Could you imagine? Yeah. Okay.